He believes that escalating the war is ultimately Israel's salvation.
Colonel Douglas MacGregor. So I don't know why this clip starts there, but he said Netanyahu must escalate to survive.
And he believes that escalating the war is ultimately Israel's salvation. I don't share that view, but that's his opinion. He probably also sees it as his personal salvation. How do you escalate the war? You goad Iran into attacking you. And this is a direct provocation designed to precipitate a major response from Iran.
And of course, we've already seen, I'll keep playing, but we've already seen a lot of that. Netanyahu wants to actually grow this war. At the same time, he's trying to walk a razor-thin wire where he doesn't want to get into a full war with Lebanon because the Israeli military, other than just bombs, is not that strong. Their military personnel are not that trained. They're not war ready, as many people say, but they do have a lot of bombs, and the U.S. will keep sending them bombs. But they don't want to be in a war with Lebanon, like a full war. They're already in a little tit for tat with Lebanon, but they also don't want to be in a full war with Iran unless the U.S. is involved. And Netanyahu very much wants to get the U.S. involved fully. And Netanyahu also very much wants to obliterate Iran. Netanyahu's been calling for Iran to be bombed for years and years now, and he keeps doing it. So part of the reason for assassinating and bombing Iran's generals and killing whatever it was, 6 people, several of them high-level generals at Iran's consulate, part of the reason they did that was to elevate things. And then Iran hit them back with 300 projectiles. And as I've mentioned before, the IDF has said 80, they stopped 86% of them, meaning 14% got through. But if you look at the ones that got through, it was the expensive hypersonic missiles. So basically, Iran showed that, yeah, you might be able to stop the drones, but you can't stop the missiles. And they didn't. Israel got what they wanted, which was for Iran to strike back, but yet it has not spiraled into all-out war, and the U.S. has not gotten fully involved. The U.S. ships endless missiles to Israel, but is not on the ground or in the air involved.
If Iran cannot be dragged into this war, then it is very unlikely that Mr. Netanyahu will be able to drag us into his war on his side. So simply put, why would you attack the sovereign territory, which is what a consulate or embassy is, as you know, of Iran? You want Iran to attack you so that you can precipitate a war that will involve the United States against Iran on your side.
If the mullahs do nothing, what do you expect Netanyahu to do? Ratchet up the attacks on Iran to do everything he can to goad them?
Yes, I would think so. I mean, there's no alternative for him. He knows that he's got to attack Hezbollah, and that's a foregone conclusion. It's just a question of when. He's got to drag in Iran into this mess as he sees it. Now, what he's not paying attention to is the coalescing of the rest of the region against him. He's not paying much attention to what's going on up in Turkey, for instance. The Turkish population is enraged at Israel, and the Turkish population just rejected Erdogan at the polls. Now, there were several reasons for that, but one of them was Erdogan's continuous provision of oil and food and other things to the Israelis.
So a lot of interesting statements there, but I think the most important one, and this is coming again from a military man, a U.S. military man, is that Netanyahu, he wants war. He wants increased war. He actually wants to grow this genocide into a war with Iran or Lebanon. But as I said, he doesn't want full war with Iran and Lebanon unless the U.S. is going to get involved, like more involved, like full U.S. war with Lebanon and Iran. But the U.S. ruling elite also understand that the U.S. is not really in a position right now to be at a full-on war with Iran and Lebanon, not to mention they're allied with Russia, so it could spiral easily into a world war. The U.S. ruling elite, they want it. It's kind of like a catch-22. And I think this is getting to some of the nuance that a lot of people don't like to get into. They like to pretend there is no nuance. Either the U.S. always wants war or the U.S. never wants war, and there's no in-between. There's nothing that ever divides that statement. And people will say things like, oh, the U.S. just always wants war for the money. And that is true, but that doesn't mean they want every war for the money. The U.S. does always need war because it does make them so much money because, as I've said before, the military-industrial complex is a giant money laundering machine, all right? It takes tax dollars. I know they just print what they want, blah, 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 but it takes your money, launders it through defense and sends it back to the pockets of the wealthiest people in America, many of these weapons contractors, lobbyists, etc. So it does need endless war, but it doesn't just want war with anyone. For example, if a full war were to spark off with China, it could be the end of the United States. It could be the end of everyone if we have a nuclear winter. Same with Russia. If there was a full-throated, straight-on war with Russia, of nuclear level, you'd probably see a nuclear winter that would kill most humans. So it doesn't mean that the U.S. ruling elite just wants all wars. They want endless war of a certain kind. They want proxy war in Ukraine. They want kind of proxy genocide in Gaza, and that U.S. boots are not on the ground, even though I have talked about the fact that they did have flip-flops on the shore, so doesn't that count as boots on the ground? They built a pier attached to Gaza with U.S. military there. Is that not boots on the ground? Flip-flops on the sand is different. They want these certain things, but they do not want the U.S. like marching into Iran, because the number of American soldiers that would be killed would be catastrophic. And it might be the one thing that could actually unite the U.S. working class against these idiot rulers of ours, against these parasitic lunatics, is if you saw thousands, and I mean thousands, of U.S. military personnel coming home in flag-draped coffins. I think that Americans might wake up a little to the reality of the situation. The U.S. does not want Israel at war with Lebanon or Iran. There are Americans who want war with Iran. For example, Trump seems okay with war with Iran. Bolton definitely wants war with Iran, and he for a while had Trump's ear. J.D. Vance, Trump's VP pick, definitely wants war with Iran and has said we need to bomb Iran. And, some in the Biden administration may as well. But for Netanyahu, it's a complicated analysis. He knows that if he ever leaves that president's office, he'll probably end up in prison, not by international war crimes, because we know nobody from the West, and I count Israel and the Western Empire, ever gets brought up on war crime charges, no matter what they do. But his own country, there's a lot of people that want to see Netanyahu in prison. And so he needs to stay in office by having endless war. And that's kind of what Douglas MacGregor said here. And it's just kind of different to get it from a military person